Hi guys, and welcome to my first video of 2020. I hope everybody had a happy new year, and today I'm going to talk about my most anticipated horror movies of 2020.
Everybody's a suspect!
Coming to get you, Bobber.
This is going to be a top 10 video. There is two that I'm going to mention just before the top 10 because they do deserve to be spoken about for a little bit at least. But the top 10 that I have, these are based on my excitement for the films, what I've seen from the films first of all, and what I've heard about them as well. Now, because they are anticipated movies, there are some movies on this list that we haven't even seen a photograph of. We're only going by who's directing it or what the cast is, etc. So keep that in mind when I'm doing this top 10, and keep that in mind when you're thinking, why has they put this in the top 10 when there isn't even a trailer for it yet? Now, my first special mention is going to be to the Wrong Turn franchise. There's a new Wrong Turn movie coming out this year called Wrong Turn: The Foundation. The main star in this is Matthew Modine. Now, this is a huge step up from what we saw before. The first Wrong Turn movie came out in 2003, and then between 2007 and 2014 we had 5 sequels that were straight to video. This one seems to be very different because, as far as I can tell, this isn't straight to video or straight to on demand. It might change, it might become a straight to video movie. I'm hoping it does. I want to see a higher budget and a bigger quality or a better quality Wrong Turn movie, because the first movie was fantastic. And one of the other reasons that I'm mentioning Wrong Turn is because this year, because there is a new Wrong Turn coming out, I'm going to be doing a franchise review of all the Wrong Turn movies leading up to this new one. The last special mention goes to the New Mutants. This might turn out to be a non-horror movie, but the first trailer that we saw for this was 2.5 years ago or so. It's gotten delayed for years. It was obviously made during the time of the Fox and Disney takeover, so there is massive issues with this film already before it's even released. And I do hear that there is a trailer for it coming out next week, so I'll be making sure I watch that trailer. But the first trailer did make it look like a horror mutant Marvel movie. It looked like a Nightmare on Elm Street style movie, so I was very looking forward to it when I first seen the first trailer, and I was really disappointed that it was delayed for so long. But we're eventually getting it now. We're getting it in 2020. The release date's not going to change, even though Disney have taken over. But because Disney have taken over, I'm worried that they've taken a lot out that we maybe necessarily wouldn't want to have been taken out. So I'm looking forward to it, but it's not in my top 10. And then number 10 is The Conjuring: The Devil Made Me Do It. This is The Conjuring 3 basically, guys. Now, there's a lot of controversy around this one, and I do agree with this one. The Conjuring 2 for me was quite controversial because of the story that they chose. It was a hoax. Those of you who are from the UK, we all followed that real story very closely back in the late 70s and the early 80s. So those of you from the US and Canada, etc., maybe didn't know about this hoax. And they're doing the exact same thing for The Conjuring 3. This storyline is also a hoax. It's a story of a boy called David Glatzel who apparently told a guy to kill somebody else. And that's it. I think it's Arn Cheyenne Johnson or something, and he killed a guy called Bono. And there's a whole trial about it. And there was actually a movie in 1983 starring Kevin Bacon that was loosely based on that film, loosely based on that true event. This is where it gets even more controversial. David Glatzel, the main boy in the film, and the main boy is part of the story, and his little brother Carl, they were mentally disturbed in real life. They had mental issues, and they came out years later and said that the Warrens made them say the things that they said back in the 80s. The Warrens denied it, but they're saying, well, we don't believe in ghosts, we don't believe in the things that were happening, we were just told to do this. And they were basically taking advantage of these little kids, these mentally disturbed kids. And I noticed in the cast for this film that David Glatzel is in it, but his brother Carl isn't cast in this, or the character Carl is not cast. Maybe he will be cast later on, but I'm assuming that if Carl doesn't get cast in this, it's because they're changing the story a little bit. And I don't mind that, because they have became more fictitious with the Conjuring movies. They've moved away from more true events and led themselves down a path of pure fiction, and I don't mind that, but I think that they should have chosen a better story for The Conjuring 3, but with all that being said, I'm still looking forward to it because I really did enjoy the first two Conjuring movies. And then number 9 is Malignant. Now there's not much I can say about this one, guys, but it's directed by James Wan. It is a horror movie and they're filming it in the style of a giallo film as well. So that's 3 things that interest me. I'm not a massive giallo fan, but all these giallo movies I didn't like were back in the 70s and 80s. But with James Wan directing a 2020 horror movie in that style, I'm really looking forward to it. We haven't had any images or anything. We've got a title card and that's about it. And that's all we know about it. But that's all we need to know for this time because it is a James Wan movie after all. And then number 8 is The Invisible Man. Now I loved what Leigh Whannell done with Upgrade, and I'm sure, and judging from the trailers, he's going to do The Invisible Man in the same camera style as he did Upgrade from what I saw in the trailers. So that excites me a lot. I loved Upgrade and I love what Leigh Whannell can do with a story. I've seen a lot of Invisible Man films and a lot of them were boring. I didn't really like most of them. In fact, I think the Chevy Chase one, Memoirs of an Invisible Man, was my favourite. I didn't like all the Hammer style horror films that had the Invisible Man in it. They were just boring. But this is a completely different take on the Invisible Man. As far as I'm aware, any Invisible Man movie didn't involve what happens in this trailer that I saw for the new Invisible Man. So I think that the mix-up and the change-up of the storyline for the Invisible Man, is this woman being possessed by a ghost? Is there a ghost haunting this woman? The ghost of her dead husband? Or is he alive but just invisible? That's what makes this movie look so interesting. This movie might bomb, this might be a bad film, but from what I've saw so far, I'm very excited. And then number 7 is Gretel and Hansel. I'm not a massive fan of the title. I think they're just trying to be controversial with changing it around from Hansel and Gretel to Gretel and Hansel. But looking at the trailer, this looks like a very artistic style horror movie, and I do like my artistic style horror movies if they're done right. It looks like a sequel to The Witch, even though it's got nothing to do with The Witch. That's how close it looks to this style of movie. Obviously it's set in the same kind of days as The Witch, and it looks like the same kind of area as well. But when I watched the trailer, Sophie Lillis is in it, and she's a great actress. She was great in the 2 It movies from 2017 and 2019. Also The Witch in this, I recognised her straight away. I thought she looks very familiar. And it is the mum from Sleepwalkers from 1992. So it looks like a good cast, a good solid cast, and it looks very dark. And I'm just excited to see where they take this Hansel and Gretel or Gretel and Hansel storyline. And then number 6 is A Quiet Place Part 2. It does look good. I didn't think A Quiet Place needed a sequel. If they wanted to explain anything that happened after the events of part 1, then give us a 2-minute montage at the end of A Quiet Place. This will be make or break for the Quiet Place franchise or the Quiet Place movies, because the first one was so perfect to me that they didn't need a part 2. I didn't mind that they didn't explain anything at the very end. I'm happy with that in films, but if you want an explanation, just give us an explanation with the end credits, and that would have been suffice for myself and for probably most of the audience. So they're taking a risk with A Quiet Place too, and sometimes risks are worth taking, especially if they make so much money at the box office and if they are really good movies. So this film could be excellent, it could be bad, time will tell, but either way I'm still very excited for it. And then number 5 is R.L. Stine's Fear Street. Some people might think, what on earth is that? And I asked myself that question at first, but when I done a search for it I thought, oh my goodness, I forgot all about that. It's basically a book series back in the mid-90s that R.L. Stine done. It was a little darker than Goosebumps. What drew me towards these Fear Street books as a young kid was the front covers. They reminded me of point horror. I don't know if the people in the US and Canada got point horror, but point horror was huge back in the mid-90s for kids my age. So because of the point horror books, it got me interested in Fear Street back in the mid-90s as well. There's not much to tell about Fear Street movie. We know that it's coming out in 2020. There's going to be a few sequels to it as well. And it's set in the mid-90s. There's rumours that Max from Stranger Things might be in it as well. And if she's not in this one, she could be in sequels. So again, the cast could be good. Setting a film in the mid-90s these days is a good idea, because we already got that 80s nostalgia rush over the past few years, and I think it's time to give the 90s a little bit of nostalgia rush this time, especially for people my age, because I was born in the 80s, but I remember most of my childhood in the 90s, so seeing things like Fear Street coming out, it excites me a lot, and the nostalgia factor is huge for something like this. And then number 4 is Antlers. Now this one could be one of these ones that's the most artistic horror movie of the year, or it could be the worst horror movie of the year. I saw the trailer for it and that got me excited. However, and if you haven't seen the trailer, guys, don't watch the trailer. The trailer spoiled absolutely everything for me. If you watch trailers and want to know a lot of things and it doesn't bother you, then go ahead and watch the trailer for this. The annoying thing is you maybe have to see the trailer to get excited for it, so that is a bad thing. But it does look really good. It looks very interesting. There's not much I want to say about it on screen here because I don't want to spoil much, but it's basically about this boy who's feeding this thing dead animals in an abandoned building. We don't know why he's doing it, or we shouldn't know why he's doing it. And the trailer to me spoils everything. The trailer tells me what it is, why he's doing it, and it tells me a few other things that I can't say here. But don't watch the trailer if you don't want to know anything about it, but I highly recommend seeing Antlers. Obviously I've not seen it, so I don't know if it's going to be good, but judging from the trailer and the way the film looks, it stars Kerry Russell and Jesse Plemons as well. So just from that cast alone gets me interested. But yeah, Antlers does look excellent. And at number 3 is Roald Dahl's The Witches. Now this is another one just like Fear Street. The original movie came out in 1990 starring Angelica Houston, and it's set at this seaside resort about this little boy whose grandmother used to fight witches, and she accidentally takes him to this resort at this hotel at one of the Grand High Witches conventions, and they have to fight off all the witches. It was a fantastic early 90s family horror movie, you could call it, and I absolutely loved it. My kids love it as well. You know, I made my kids watch it and they absolutely love this film. In fact, they love it so much they watch it all the time. So remakes don't bother me. For those of you who hate remakes, I don't know why, because sometimes remakes can be good, they can be bad. But one thing that remakes do is it makes you remember the original, and also lets this generation watch the original as well. Whether they like it or not, they get exposed to the original if they didn't know it existed before. And that's what's going to happen with The Witches. This year, a lot of people are going to watch The Witches, the original. And this one, the Grand High Witch, is played by Anne Hathaway. Forgot her name there. Anne Hathaway is playing the Grand High Witch. That will be very interesting. I know that Stanley Tucci's in it as well. I think he might play the Rowan Atkinson character from the original. He was the hotel manager. They've changed the storyline up a little bit because it's not set in the US, it's not set in the UK anymore, it's set in the US. Octavia Spencer is playing the grandmother to Luke in this, so all the basics are there. They've just changed it up slightly, and it does sound interesting. Again, we haven't seen any images, we haven't seen any trailers, but judging from the original itself and the story to The Witches, I'm really looking forward to this one. And at number 2 is Candyman. Now, I'll be honest guys, I wasn't a massive fan of Candyman growing up. In fact, watching it today, I'm still not a massive fan of Candyman. I love the soundtrack to Candyman, I love the score, I love the acting, and the setting is quite eerie, but it just wasn't one of my favourites growing up, and it's still a good film. This one that's coming out, again, there's no trailers for it yet, but we do know that Tony Todd is coming back as Candyman. I don't know if he's going to be the only Candyman in this film. It's a semi-sequel to the original Candyman as well, so it'll be interesting to find out what happens there. Looking at the cast looks solid. Jordan Peele co-wrote this film and he produced it as well. Say what you want about Jordan Peele, the man can direct and write a film, so with him writing the new Candyman, I'm very excited. And at number 1, and no surprise, it's Halloween Kills. I've spoken about Halloween for years on this channel, guys, and like it or hate the 2018 Halloween movie, it breathed new life into the Halloween franchise, and it left us on what you could call a cliffhanger, and that cliffhanger is going to be answered possibly this year with Halloween Kills. And I know that Halloween Kills is also going to leave us on a cliffhanger for next year with Halloween Ends, but the fact that they've cemented this 2-sequel movie, or 2 sequels that are coming out, it tells me that the producers, the directors, the cast, they're all interested and they're all invested in making a good movie. This might not be a good movie at all, but I'm very excited for Halloween Kills and what we've seen so far. This is one of the only movies on the list that we've actually had a trailer for, or a semi-trailer for, that's coming out later on in the year. And what we've saw so far is promising and interesting, and I think the fact that we've had behind the scenes images, behind the scenes trailers and TV spots tells us that the producers of this movie, the director of this movie, knows that this is a highly anticipated movie, and that's why it's number 1 on my list.
Happy Halloween.
So that's my top 10 most anticipated horror movies of 2020, guys. I know that I tacked 2 on at the very start of this because there's a lot of horror movies coming out this year. Some that look good, some that look bad, some that don't interest me at all that might interest you. And that's my question to you guys. Is there anything on this list that I haven't mentioned? As always, leave your comments down below. Anyway guys, thanks a lot for watching again. Thanks for subscribing. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.